Welcome back, Wolfpack Rollers here, and we have quite the controversy today as Scott Glaza approached me at a PAX Pokemon tournament and used his power as an official Pokemon Company employee to give me a loss in a tournament by manipulating the rules mid-tournament. So let me explain more because this is quite the outlandish statement to make, but I have more than enough evidence to support what I'm saying here. So let's start off with PAX. I went to PAX, I enjoyed it, I had a blast. And right here, if you click on schedule, you'll eventually find out on Sunday, 3 p.m., there was a Pokemon tournament. Now, the rules about the Pokemon tournament were not clearly defined until 45 minutes before the tournament started. That went on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I asked, and I heard anywhere from a single battle to a double battle. Single battle spot rules, single battle 6v6. It was all over the place, and no one really knew. I was ready for a single battle. It's not that I wanted VGC more than anything else. If there was singles, I would have battled. If there was doubles, I would have battled. And it landed on VGC doubles 45 minutes before the tournament. So throughout the entire weekend, it took until the last minute to really decide what we were doing. At this time, the only thing that the PAX judges, so let's go and click on the PAX enforcers, that there were no official Pokemon players running the tournament, there were no official anyone, that it was just a PAX run tournament by the PAX volunteers. That they were there just kind of like saying whatever they thought the rules were right for Pokemon. They didn't really know what they got themselves into, and I was bringing a strategy that is pretty controversial to begin with. The only rulings that they had said about the timer is that go into your game, select flat rules, select double battles, and play Pokemon. That was all that they said, which did not have any specifics about the timer, that it was not specifically stated as a 15-minute timer, and that's where we get into our problem. So naturally, I'm going to set up my Snorlax, and Snorlax is going to go huge. My Snorlax was +2 evasion, and it was from the minimizes, and it was also like +3 or +4 defenses, and it was super set up because it got the just belly drum, and that's when my opponent had this epiphany. She decided to start timer stalling me, and now we're starting to get into a mess. So the actual definition of a timer stall is fairly vague, but it is defined as an unsportsmanlike behavior. That if the opponent or if one of the players involved feels that an intentional timer stall is going on, that shows unsportsmanlike play. So right here, I'm at the general Pokemon rules, the general event rules, this is this page right here, and then the VGC rules and formats, that's this page right here. Not making anything up, these are the rules that were in place for the 2015 VGC rules, and that is what the tournament was played on. So right here is where things start getting interesting. Untethered time limits. At tournaments where the battle boxes are not locked, which is what this tournament was. It was unsanctioned. It was just some PAX people wanting to have a Pokemon tournament, because how can you not have a Pokemon tournament at any kind of convention or event where gaming is involved? The time limit outlined in sections 4.1 through 4.3, so right here, will be enforced by judge ruling. Time limits may be extended or adjusted to the tournament organizer's discretion, but must be communicated prior to the event. Right here's what we need. Communicated prior to the beginning of the tournament and may never be shorter than the time limits outlined. As far as I was aware, from what I was told, that there was no set time limit, that we were playing flat rules, so there was a 60-minute timer, 90 seconds to make a decision. With the actual VGC rules, it's a 45-second timer and a 15-minute time limit. So when my opponent started timer stalling, we called over a judge because we were in a stalemate right now. She admitted to me that I had absolute win condition. That in an event where there was not a 15-minute timer, she admitted defeat to me. She conceded that that was it. And she admitted that her only win condition was playing out the timer. And that's when we called over a judge. And that's when the judge said, all right, what's going on here? I don't have any idea. And I told him that she's running out the timer. What are we doing? The first judge that approached didn't know what the timer was because I said flat rules is 60 minutes. That's what we've been playing for the last round. The last battle in my first round went past the 15 minutes and none of that was enforced. So we really didn't have an idea of what was going on. Then the other judge came over and then we were talking, and that's where our man Scott Glaza approached us. He pulled out his wallet, pulled out a card from his wallet, handed it to one of the PAX enforcers, who was not an official judge by any means, said, I work for Pokemon, pointed at me, looked me in the eye and said, this man is making stuff up. There was no sportsmanship clause for anything, and she is allowed to run out the timer. Now we're in a heated discussion because things start getting even funnier. If we were playing VGC rules, then that means she should make her decisions within 45 seconds. But since we were in flat rules, she was taking 90 seconds, because it's a 60 minutes with 90 seconds for turns, to timer stall me and then run the clock to 15 minutes. So she was unfairly taking turns from me in a 15-minute situation, and that's where things are getting out of control. That there was no prior enforcement, that we were playing to the T, 45-second, 15-minute rules, and that's why we are in this stalemate. So Scott comes up and he says that I'm wrong about sportsmanship. Well, that shows that he is now using his power as a Pokemon employee to manipulate the tournament mid-tournament. That since there wasn't any specification, it could have been 60-minute turns. But instead, he had to cut it down to 15 during that, and as we saw right here, must be communicated prior to the beginning of the tournament. So this is an official Pokemon Company employee changing the rules of the tournament by distracting the judges and giving me the game loss, which is actually against rule number 1 in Pokemon Event. That this is the general tournament rules. Rule number 1 is the spirit of the game, and right here we have sportsmanship. Winning or losing with grace is vital to the enjoyment of the game. The desire to continue playing game can be soured by players who berate their opponents after winning or losing a match. Likewise, a player who plays the clock, specifically in the first page of the Pokemon General Rules, rather than the game, shows poor sportsmanship and should be discouraged from doing so whenever possible. This official Pokemon employee encouraged this time stalling behavior to my opponent, while also encouraging the time stalling to the PAX judges by saying, I work for Pokemon, this is a legitimate strategy. Which also goes to this other rule, respect. Players, spectators, and staff should be treated with the same respect that players would expect for themselves. Distracting an opponent or judge to gain advantage shows disrespect to everyone involved in a Pokemon tournament. I feel he was distracting the judge and also intruding as a spectator into our battle. That the rules weren't in question until that point. That until she realized that she was going to lose, she was not timer stalling. But at that moment, suddenly the rules change, and Scott is for the unofficial changing of the rules, which is against the actual rules of Pokemon. He also said that as an official employee for Pokemon, he knows the rules more, and that way he can convince the PAX judges. So that's where we start getting into even more craziness about this. So now we're back at the Play Pokemon Rules and Resources, and if we scroll down here, we have a penalty guidelines. So the penalty guidelines for VGC have been put right here. That a major penalty guidelines, so players are expected to behave in a respectful manner to all attendees and staff of a Pokemon event. Players who do not behave properly need to be reminded with an issuance of a penalty. Infractions in this category can have a direct impact on the event or operation to a small degree of emotional distress. Examples of unsporting conduct, which is what is shown right here, that this is unsportsmanship to be playing for timer stall, playing slowly to manipulate the game time remaining in a match. That is a major penalty. Recommended started penalty, game loss. Boom. Right there, that if you are shown to be doing an illegal time stall to manipulate the time remaining in a match to get a battle that you would have otherwise not won, right there, immediate loss. And that's the problem I had in my other video. That at a 2012 Regionals tournament, I brought the same team, I had the same thing happen. The judges were not aware of the penalty guidelines to distribute for this, and it just shows that playing slowly to manipulate the time remaining in a match, you're just given a game loss, and even then, there could be a warning. That's what the judges did. They gave a warning, but none of the judges wanted to be a jerk and kind of give a game loss immediately for that, even though it's in the rules. So that's where things also get really interesting with Scott Glaza. To make sure I had the right guy, Scott Glaza, he looked very familiar. I thought I noticed him from Worlds. He is the Nugget Bridge co-founder, returning commentator from 2013 and 2014, and that's where we had this little interaction. Wait, are you the guy that came up to me at the PAX tournament? Yeah, sorry about that. Thought PAX volunteers were getting put into an unfair situation, so he used his discretion to say something about it, that they weren't equipped to handle there. But you told them I was making stuff up. You even pulled out your card to work for Pokemon. So with this situation, he's not disagreeing with anything. He's not saying that, oh, I didn't say that, I didn't do this. He pretty much acknowledges all of this, and he was claiming that I am citing a non-existent rule. Volunteers aren't Pokemon judges, you put them in a really unfair spot. Actually, he was manipulating everything to put me in an unfair spot is what it felt like. Because right here, the rules were already kind of situated and whatnot, and he pretty much admits that I was citing to him a non-existent rule, when right here, I've already shown it's not a non-existent rule. That it's not up to his discretion to say if it's a non-existent rule or not. It's in the book, and that's a penalizable action. And what he has to say about it as a worker for the Pokemon Company, he's just throwing his weight around to have me get a loss for a tournament in an unjust way. And I feel that that's just wrong. that we went to Twitter, I added him, we did some DMs, and right here I said, I'm a bit upset since it seemed like you were defending a friend. The lady was not a friend apparently, but they did know each other, that they have played against in tournaments, and then that's where things keep getting interesting. I was concerned for the PAX people. I didn't want to step in there, but they didn't know enough about the official rules to try to mediate a solution there. They got help from one of my friends who is actually a VGC judge to even get the PDF for the rules. The situation they got put in was way beyond what they were ready to handle, and that's where things further get interesting, that another DM, regardless of what either of us think about the timer, the rule is the players can use full time. The judges had no idea what the rules were, but they were put on the event for players to enjoy. But that's not the rules. That he told the judge false rules, or at least his interpretation that that's not the rules, while encouraging slow play, while encouraging all of these behaviors and admitting the opposite. Didn't mean to be offensive about it, but I realized afterwards I probably could have been a little bit more diplomatic. Sorry again about that. At least he apologized. But in the moment, it seems that there is not a clear understanding of what the Pokemon VGC rules are. Even though I've done the research on this, that when I played this and when I make these claims, these aren't BS claims. That they're in the rules, that I feel there's an unfair timer stalling going on that goes against player sportsmanship, and that's been the rules since even VGC 2012. That on this page right here, I took a Glaza screen cap. Time limits. Tournament staff is responsible for running a timely event, and then there are time limits during various portions of the event. Any mid-game effects, such as selecting move or retreating Pokemon, are to take place in a reasonable amount of time. Now, if you're taking the full 45 seconds to go up against a Snorlax that you haven't been able to hit for the last 3 turns, that you know if you let it attack, it's going to one-shot or two-shot a majority of your Pokemon, that means reasonable amount of time. Like, the opponent, at this point, she was out of Encore. She had no way of shutting down Snorlax. She encored me, she would have encored me into Crunch anyway, so I would have only been forced to attack offensively. If the player feels that the pace is unwarranted, that player will be subject to the game tempo of the pop penalty guidelines, which is right here. I think the thing that upsets me the most is also the people that say, I didn't know for certain that she's running out the clock, or my opponent is intentionally time stalling. She obviously was, that there was no option, that she used the same moves for the last couple turns, that she wasn't even staring at her DS. Her DS was below the table in her hand, just kind of like hanging there while she was complaining with Scott or complaining with other people about what's going on or talking with judges. She wasn't even watching her game, and at that point she already admitted defeat. She admitted that there was absolutely no way of beating my Pokemon. When you've done that, there's no more strategy involved, there's no more thinking about it, that you have a set amount of plays at that point, and if you take 45 seconds to make the same play over and over again, you're time stalling. That shouldn't even come into question whether or not the opponent was, because it's obvious when they are. And that's kind of the problem that we're dealing with here. Another problem with Scott Glaza is that he knows me. Right here's a tweet. Aaron's Twitch chat tells me Sakane feels it was okay GC because I won on time. Guess he'd get along great with Verlisify. I don't know when this was. I don't know the details about it. I guess there was some kind of timer run out and someone got mad about it. But he mentioned my name in a tweet a long time ago, and right here, I pulled up this tweet and asked him in the DM, yo, this seems like you knew me personally because of the situation. And he admitted, I am certainly aware of your thoughts on the timer. So he identified me as Verlisify, saw me, made eye contact with me, was in disagreement with what I think about the timer, and went to a judge with that disagreement to give me a loss in a tournament as an official Pokemon employee, and he explicitly, that was the first thing he said was, I work for Pokemon, this guy's making stuff up. That he was aware of me, he knows who I am, he was able to identify me, and he used biases against me to hand me a loss to someone he's familiar with. I feel that's corruption. That's pretty absurd stuff, and I mean, his thoughts of the timer seem to be wrong according to the rest of the Pokemon rules. That we have all these other sources. This is on Nugget Bridge, this is a forum post on Nugget Bridge, which is VGC related, that just kind of outlines the major penalty guidelines. That I've had judges rule that they are timer stalling, that other people, this guy's post has also had people rule that, you know, there was timer stalling involved. And no one really knows what the situation is. And I feel that there's a huge problem here because it feels like the judge's opinions are getting in the way of the ruling. It's his opinion that it's right, even though in the rulings, it's black and white wrong. And there's many places where this kind of keeps popping up. So, I went to PAX to have fun. I played Minimized Drifloon into Snorlax because I wasn't in it to win it. I wanted to at least enjoy myself, but not have this Pokemon company employee use his power against me because he has bias through understanding who I am. That's one of the dumbest things I never expect, you know? Okay, I'd take a legitimate loss. When the opponent looks at me and says, yeah, you beat me, I'm gonna run out the timer stall because that's my win condition. Something is wrong. Like, I acknowledge that he apologized. I acknowledge that he understands this, but at the time, he had a very unpleasant mood about him. that he looked me in the eye, he was saying all these things like about me not understanding the game properly, saying that I'm making stuff up, calling me a liar to the tournament host. He didn't say anything first. He pulled out his official Pokemon employee card first and immediately stepped in with someone to get a ruling against me with someone that he's familiar with. Sure, he's not friends with Gabby, but they have battled before, and they were having a pleasant conversation afterwards. He's like, don't get salty, it's okay, it's okay. You know, he was trying to reassure her that the tournament was going to be fine. So it was just really a mess after that, and I don't believe it. And I find it hard that this goes back to my whole corruption of Pokemon thing, that people are taking the game way too seriously, that the spirit of game, that what Pokemon is supposed to be about is being broken all the time, that people are cheating left and right, that the rules aren't being properly enforced because of biases or opinions, when really it's written in the rules how it should be responded to. So I don't know what to make of this, but that's why I'm pretty upset right now. So if you guys enjoyed this video, I hope you all have a nice day.